Good morning. Good morning. So, friends and free friends, I have now a new friend named Nancy, and I feel as though her work is the epitome of what I'm trying to do with a podcast and the Free in Albany account. So it's a real pleasure for me to bring this to you, bring this conversation to you. Now, Nancy and I came into being only a couple of
Mm.
days ago as the date of this recording. I am friends with her son, a local neighbor here downtown at one point, and he reached out to me specifically to make sure that his mother was highlighted for this purpose. And I cannot think of a better way to showcase, I don't know, in my humble opinion, the cream of the crop that the Capital Region has to offer in terms of people who are really just grinding away, trying to make other people's lives better. And in return, they're bettering their own lives. So um, I would like to introduce to you guys Nancy Bacon. And thank you.
Hi.
Thank you. So specifically what we're going to be talking about today is your work, and however you choose to characterize that as charity or outreach, however you choose. But we've had our previous conversation focused on the Buy Nothing group, Facebook,
Mhm.
and Street Soldiers. So to begin, what do Buy Nothing and Street Soldiers groups do? These are two separate entities, by the way.
Right, right. Street Soldiers is a grassroots organization that meets once a month in Albany in Academy Park. And we help unhoused people in Albany, and also not just unhoused, but also people that need some help out to we offer food, personal care items, hugs, check-ins, make sure everybody's okay, getting everything that they need is, what we can offer. And we always have like camping supplies on hand, like tents and sleeping bags and stuff, because I'm sure everyone has seen there is a high unhoused population in Albany, and it's getting cold, so it's really worrisome.
Indeed, I feel like the visibility of the population breeds organizations such as yours, which are so invaluable. And I don't want to say unsung. I'm not trying to be trite here, but people who really kind of work away from any type of media. They're just trying to be helpful, and that's why I'm so glad we're having this conversation. With Street Soldiers in particular, can you tell us how Street Soldiers got started?
Yeah, sure. Renee and Mike Fahey started Street Soldiers 7 years ago with just noticing people in need on the street. And they just showed up one night on Washington Avenue with a card table and some soup and sandwiches. And a couple people stopped and they, shared what they had. And then they decided to go back the next week, the same day, the same time, and there was a few more people and so on. So by going the same day, same time, same place, it grew. Um, and not just the people in need, but the volunteers. The word spread and everybody wanted to help. And then it went from just sandwiches and soup to other hot food items, personal care items. Everybody just brought whatever they thought would be beneficial. um, and so it's been 7 years, and now there are 18 tables at least, with all sorts of personal care items, laundry detergent, snacks, pop top canned food items, microwave produce, um, clothing, hot meals, coffee, you name it, anything that someone would enjoy, which would help them out in any way. And like I said before, you get to know everybody, so it's a check-in for us too. and get updates on how they're doing. Usually people will come back and let us know if they've been housed or have a room somewhere. So there's good news, there's sad news, but it's that family feeling on both sides of the table. The people that come that we help and the people that come with items that give.
Spectacular. Is there any one
Mhm.
particular success story you can think of?
Yes. There was a man years back um that was living on the street, was getting heat, laid on slept on a grate at night, in Albany. Um, he was alcoholic. Um, he was on the street for I think 20 years. And Renee and Mike were able to get some, hook him up with the resources that he needed. It took a lot of time, but he finally was moved into an apartment, and
Mm.
with Street Soldiers' help, got everything he needed, furniture, all the housewares, all that stuff. Um, so he's been in an apartment and stayed in an apartment for years now. Um, and over time, Renee decided that, he needed something to, he needed a purpose. He needed someone to take care of something. So she bought him a fish. He took such great care of this fish. The fish wasn't acting right at one time, and he called the vet. Was so worried about this fish, but and then it was just a couple years ago that she decided he was ready for more, so got him a kitten. This kitten is his life still. To this day, she had gotten him a backpack that he could put the cat in. Um, and he carries them around everywhere, like everything. Just it is his dependent, and he really did need that. It's the cat is his world. We're really, really proud of him. He's been doing really, really well.
That really solidifies the human connection when I think about what a tough issue it is for not only the United States and local governments to tackle. How do we tackle, how do we fix the
Mm.
unhoused problem? I think blending in some real anecdotal, like this is real experience from people who
Mhm.
are on the ground, as it were, with the folks who need the most help. It helps to know that it's not untackleable, tackleable.
Right,
Something
right.
can be done really at the local level. How do you feel, speaking of, how do you feel about that? Do you feel, what level of service do you think has the largest impact in your experience? Is it at the local level, the federal level, the state level?
I think it's the local level. I mean, they're overwhelmed.
Mm.
Um, I think, I mean, the main issue is just not enough housing, affordable housing, or mental health. Because the answer isn't really just finding an apartment and putting the person in an apartment. There needs to be life skills taught. There needs to be evaluations for mental health, proper medications and therapy. And, it's not, the answer isn't just finding a place. It's so much deeper than that. And I think that's where the system fails. It's almost like setting people up for failure to put them in an apartment and not give them any kind of instruction or guidance. Some people will never be able to just live independently because they have an apartment. It's so much more support needed, and backup and checking on the person. And um, really, it's a big teaching thing, especially people that have been on the street for a long time. And there's no trust because they've been failed so many times. So it's a big issue, and I don't even know like where the start is, but I feel like it has to be backed up, um and to get to the root of each individual need.
It's a very interesting point, again, because I'm coming from just a regular tax-paying citizen who is aware of some of the country's larger issues, right? That's another
Mhm.
purpose of the conversation, is to really put a fine point on experientially what it actually looks like day to day. And I think most of us know that simply throwing money or creating funding for such deeply impactful issues is not enough.
Mhm.
If money and the resources that come with money are not managed well, then
Right.
the purpose will be off. Yeah, the purpose won't be fulfilled. Interesting point about that. I've made a huge mental note about down the chain. Now, people who deal with unhoused or mental health impacted, addiction impacted unhoused people are, I'm sure, very keenly aware of what you're discussing. But
Mhm.
as the average citizen, sometimes, unless we take the step to educate ourselves, I wouldn't have thought about, because I think the high level obviously is finding a roof, but yeah, I correlate it to taking a very young person, an adolescent who maybe doesn't have life experience,
Right.
not to denigrate the unhoused people, but if we apply that same logic to our lives, would we want to put a 15-year-old ostensibly into a home by themselves without a checkbook management, how to turn on utilities and
Mhm.
pay bills and things like that? That makes perfect sense. And I appreciate that. It's already a huge takeaway from this conversation, is the downstream or upstream, however it is viewed in this context, how we can take care of people and to get them integrated into society in that way, the same way we
Mhm.
might with people exiting prison. Again, I'm not drawing direct correlations between these folks, but tying issues together, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
That's relatable for sure. People getting out of prison, it's like, okay, there you go. And then
yeah,
what?
and well, I mean, that's also an issue, right?
Yeah.
Especially people who have spent large chunks of their life,
Right.
behind bars. And okay, I mean, and you know, veteran, like, okay, so who comprises, in your experience, the unhoused population? Like,
It
what
is
demographics?
it is really, that covers a lot.
Yeah.
Um, I would say mainly mental health, but the thing that I haven't been able to figure out is if the mental health issues came after they lost their housing or before. I mean, it's obvious that if people have mental health issues, their chances of being successful in an apartment aren't great, and there's so many reasons why they would be evicted or put on the street. But then you have people that had a medical emergency and were just wiped out financially. And, we have met people that have been through that, that just lost everything because of, themselves getting sick, or maybe their spouse getting sick, or a divorce, or a breakup. Um, and then that can be not having a house, a home, and just trying to find a place to sleep all the time, that's safe, can cause mental health or can cause drug addiction or alcoholism. So I just don't, it's really all across the board, and you never know what comes first with that. Or there's so many reasons why people lose their housing, um, and it's sad, and I don't think there's enough people to individually get to the root of all that and then work from, that first step, the main evaluation and what could have happened, and to try and assist that way.
One of the discussions that I've had with a coworker and a friend over the years, especially since pandemic started,
Mm.
is I was living in Texas at the time, and I had a nice homestead. It's a nice spread. I'm currently a renter here by choice. I love renting. Anyway, in that discussion, or one of our discussions, was the idea of financial instability, which I think is something as Americans we should all kind of consider, and what the ramifications of taking care of ourselves, our personal financial health. And so when my coworker friend and I were talking, that deep realization of we are all just one financial catastrophe away from being unhoused.
Absolutely. And I
And
have learned that from going to street soldiers, from hearing people talk or finding out individual stories. And that's what I tell everybody. You know, don't put yourself way up there above anyone else, because you are really just one test. One serious car accident, one serious medical emergency of any kind in your family, you know, anything can do it. You could be great one day, and the next day you have no idea how you're going to pay the bills, and you're trying to keep a person alive, watching the growing cost, and then not knowing if you're going to have a place to bring that person home to.
I think if I look back at American history, like try to correlate these the context of this conversation back to my real life experience. We was it 2008, so we had the Great Recession. And I think there was sort of a blush of it at the beginning of a pandemic as well, where you see people who might be driving BMWs to a food pantry. And I say that without any judgment of any kind, because being rocked, it's something I think about all the time, is being about my financial health, is being rocked foundationally. And like you say, if you have dependents, either sandwiched, if you're raising children and taking care of your parents and something happens, I cannot say that to myself enough. Like,
Right.
that is absolutely not my situation necessarily. But the whole point for this is things can change so suddenly, and we can do our best. What I tell myself is do your best to be prepared. Ironically, and that's why I named the podcast I Am Not Prepared podcast, because we can only prepare ourselves for so much,
That's
right?
Right.
I try to use my executive thinking skills to have plans A, B, and C, but when it comes down to the nut cutting, this, my place could burn down, or I could lose my job. These are real life things that actually happen. So one of the things is I find it not a matter of course in my life. Unfortunately, this is kind of a sort of a negative thing I've come to realize, or maybe it's just me at this stage of my life, thinking of others, placing myself around people who constantly think of others is extraordinarily enriching for me. That tells me to be more conscious of the fact, just of my fellow citizens. Because I think also, I'm thinking, how do I take care of myself and my family? Most people are, their first and their last thoughts are of themselves as human beings.
Right.
But, by placing myself in a position where I'm hearing more and more about people who think of others as a way of life, that is so enriching for me. I cannot explain that to you. I'm just so glad we're having this conversation. And if nothing else, just to put the bug in the ear to reach out more to volunteer organizations. How can someone get involved from zero, get involved with Street Soldiers?
Well, that is easy. You just show up once a month, and you can just bring yourself and stand behind the table and help hand things out. Or you can bring a couple sandwiches or anything you think that our friends would need, and join in. We start setting up about 6:20, between 6:20 and 6:30 on the third Friday of every month. We are totally set up. All our guys and girls that are there will usually come over to our cars and help us unpack. And we set up 18 tables and everything that's being given to them within minutes. The line starts at 7. And we are done usually and packed up by 8 o'clock. So it's really an hour and a half of your time once a month. And we do it no matter what the weather is, rain, snow, below zero, wind chill. We are there.
Is that AM or PM?
Oh, PM.
That's what I
Friday
thought
night.
it was evening.
Yeah.
And in the location for that?
That is in Academy Park, across from the courthouse. We park on Elk Street. And we set up there's a monument there, and we set up right next to the monument.
And that's in Albany, New
Albany.
York. Try to get those details specifically
Right.
for you, but I will definitely link Street Soldiers and the information to this conversation as well.
Okay, great.
Always
and
best to hear it from you.
Yeah. Right. And we can be found on Facebook.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, excellent.
Mhm.
Awesome. Oh, I love that. What a great way to social media. Some organizations lean into it, some of them lean away, but
That's how we get all of our assistance, is through Facebook. That's how we do it. And we also, let me include, we also have a Street Soldiers Rensselaer that sets up the third Saturday morning of each month. That's only a couple years old, but it has taken off. That Rensselaer community is unbelievable. So many community members have just jumped in. Everybody loves it. It's a great group. And then there's also Street Soldiers in Schenectady that is every Sunday at 4 o'clock. That one is every single Sunday. That one's really large. Sadly enough, they're probably averaging around 200 people.
Folks served or folks participating?
Yeah, folks served. COVID really doubled their number. Coming out of that. The pandemic has really, it's been rough, really rough.
I'm glad you're there. Interesting. There's so much support. One of the things I really enjoy about living in the capital region, Tri-Cities especially, so Albany, Troy, Schenectady, is not only thinking of people as, top of mind daily, but the amount of community support and the amplification of volunteer organizations. People really do enjoy boosting volunteer organizations here. And so they're more and more visible. So I really enjoy seeing posts of all sorts where, hey, because for me, relating back to my life, because I consider myself just an average person, I clean out my closet twice a year. For one person, I seem to have amassed quite a collection. So this makes it easy for me to simply bag up these items, and I have multiple places in the region that are top of mind for me that I can donate directly to, or I can reach out to you directly and say, I have women's X size clothing. Would that be of use? Or I could show up with them, whichever.
Right. That's right.
So yeah, I love it because there's nothing that we don't have to be so wasteful as consumers. It's okay to be done with something, but there is someone who may really appreciate your gently used items. And I'd like to use this portion of the conversation to segue over to the Buy Nothing groups.
Yes.
So as I said in our pre-interview, I was unaware that Buy Nothing groups existed, and I feel deeply ignorant. I am now a part of the Buy Nothing Albany specific group, and I love watching the post because I get a feel of how items knowledge is shared within that, and you get a sense of boundaries and things like that, or what's available. And my experience from Buy Nothing Albany, only on Facebook, by the way, is there is nothing. what I just said, we don't have to
Right.
waste, because there's an
No.
audience for anything and everything.
Yes.
Your children's items, your children's projects. You know, I've seen things come up for schools. Do you
Mhm.
have this? Anything from poster board to markers and things like that. And it's like, why did I not ever think about
Right.
using Buy Nothing?
Right.
So, can you tell us about your Buy Nothing experience? Like, I hear you are very much a leader in Buy Nothing right now.
I am so passionate about this group. I could talk about it for days and days. And to be honest, it took me a little while to get it. I had joined the Buy Nothing group in Albany initially when I lived in Colony, there, because at the time there wasn't one in Colony. But anyway, just watching, you know, you think of it right off the bat as like a free site. So you need something, you want something, you post it. But it has a lot of guidelines, and it concentrates on giving, asking, and showing gratitude. And we keep it really kind of tight into that community itself, because it's hyper local giving. So it's trying to get it back to being able to ask your neighbor for a cup of sugar, or, you know, and having things really convenient, you know, maybe a couple blocks away, you can scoot over and get, or someone will drop off to you because you're so close. But it's so much more in that the structure is, if someone posts an ask, you know, I'm in search of a new rug for my floor. We keep it in the community, so we don't allow other people to say, oh, I just saw them on sale at Walmart, or there's a garage sale around the corner and they're selling lots of rugs. Its purpose is to keep it within the community, to giving from others in your community with no resources from anywhere, none are allowed. So it's just to make your post and wait and see. I can't think of off the top of my head any asks that haven't been given. Anything and everything, like a specific little toy that someone lost, a child lost from a game, a one little piece, someone made an ask and got it within like an hour. It's amazing. It really is. And being an administrator of my group in Guilderland, Altamont, and Voorheesville, I see all the posts and read from beginning to end. So I'm one that sees like, wow, she just gave that, someone scooped that up like within 15 minutes, or somebody made a post for 2 specific things for their kids for Christmas and got it within an hour. That was just the other day. It's great. And it's really about trying to get used to, you know, giving used things. They're perfectly fine and usable, and too many people throw things out, perfectly used items. So we like to keep stuff out of the landfill as much as possible.
What an interesting tie-in too. It's like I said, talking to you on Friday really gave my frugality, my innate frugality, a boost.
Mhm.
I try to donate as much as possible, and again, there are many many organizations that will
There are.
receive your used items, but I did not realize the relevance of, I don't know, it really anything down to, I hate to say it, but almost anything I might put in, it's not what I mean, but almost anything I might go ahead and chunk,
Right.
someone might have a use for. And it's the smallest things that, what I see when when the post reel through my feed is, or sorry, I'm trying to say like 3 different things at one time.
Right.
What I see is a lot of lifestyle enrichment stuff as
Mhm.
well. Like, people trying to enrich their children's lives, or setting up house for the first time. You know,
Right.
either I've come off the street and I need to set up house, or my youngster is setting up their first house, or I'm
Right.
new and I need to set up house. And that reminds me, there's a couple of pieces of cookware I would like to replace. I'll keep you in mind. Like when I get to the donation
Right.
stage. I mean, just really anything. And it, to me, I don't mind being ignorant and having my mind blown, but it's really a fun thing to be on this side and to be able to say, I don't have to put that stuff in a landfill. I don't have to feel bad about putting that in a bag to be chunked when I could put it in a paper bag to be given. And I
Right.
think it sounds super basic,
Yeah,
but I think as an American consumer, we live in a completely disposable
we
society. Like,
do.
and it doesn't have to, it should be I could reframe that in my head as a shareable society, or a donation society. And that's it. Like I said, I can't, I almost can't wait to move so I can see what it is that might have another life somewhere else. But I
Right.
don't have to actually move. I can just churn through my belongings and be just fine with it.
Right.
Um,
Well,
how did
the fun part of that is people will put their in search ofs, and I feel like a lot of us love we wait for those posts, because then we're like, oh, I have that, and that is like the best feeling. You'll dig it out, you're like, I you don't even remember you have some things. If you have storage in your house, you have so much stuff. But if someone asks for a specific item, then you're like, oh yeah, it's in the bottom of a box somewhere, I'm gonna find it. And that makes you feel so good. um that Because yeah, that probably would be something at one time I would have thrown away. And now I don't. Everything is just offered up.
I love it. I feel like that's a great way of life, and by extension, the community investment is
Hmm.
also there. So getting to know one's neighbors in the region, because it may not be next door, but I
Right.
consider I'm at this stage in my life where I am trying to think about other people more often. So I view folks in the capital region as my neighbors, and hopefully
Right.
one day the remainder of the globe will be my neighbors in my mind as well.
Hmm.
I think that goes a long way in um, developing a connection. That, with the pandemic, COVID
Hmm.
broke a lot of human connections because it was necessary to separate ourselves physically from other people.
Right.
And loneliness, and the sense of the loss or grief of a life that we used to live.
Right.
So I have found in my travels, just talking to people, that rebuilding connections, getting more rooted in one's community is more and more increasingly important for a lot of people, but sometimes they don't know how to start.
Right.
And just by talking to people, it's enabled me to be a conduit to get people together. And again, that's another reason for the podcast. It's another reason for the free account, is so that we to close that gap. We don't have to be as separated as we feel, because this is, I don't even I don't even know you. And we're going to be on the internet together.
Right.
And I love how basic that is. So
Hmm.
using social media, using the tools that we have to reconnect, and not to kind of come out of that. I've noticed with New York in particular, so the state, um, given its experience with the pandemic, took the pandemic very seriously, whereas other parts of the
Yeah.
country, rules were laxed sooner. And so
Hmm.
New York, having experienced as a state the trauma of being so secluded for such a long time, I happened to come here in March of 22, and things were just coming back,
Right.
is what I hear my neighbors saying, right? They're
Right.
like, yeah, we've been very separated for such a long time. And
Hmm.
So the volunteer opportunities and the community investment, I think the resurgence of that or regaining some momentum in this new post-pandemic world. I think I'm kind of stunned in a way because my experience was different in Texas.
Yeah, I'm sure it was.
It
Yeah.
was. People were getting haircuts six weeks later. It is completely different. Yeah,
Yeah,
the 6 weeks.
opposite.
Yeah. Um, and they were screaming for those haircuts, let me tell you.
Yeah.
So coming from from a culturally different standpoint, really just talking to people about that separation, about that loneliness, about the
Mhm.
disconnection, has actually drawn me closer to the people here. Um, and so being in touch with the idea that people are coming out of a loneliness cycle or a disconnection cycle,
Right.
um, and then the ever-present and growing need for resources direct to consumer
Mhm.
resources such as Buy Nothing and Street Soldiers, and then really kind of socially peeling back what the after effects are of living in a pandemic and post-pandemic world, because some people
Right.
have not adopted the desire to be close anymore as well too. So there's a lot of psychological issues that go around.
There
I
are.
didn't mean to go off on a jag on
Yeah,
that.
but that's all very true. And actually, the Buy Nothing Project really took off more during the pandemic, and that's actually when I started my group. Um, because it was a connection to people. So, I think I believe they initially stopped. They put a stop on until they could figure out how to keep Buy Nothing going. And then it was pretty simple, just drop off on porches. So people have bins outside or porches, and it kind of makes it more convenient, where it was more one-on-one before that. But it's still it's still good the way it is, because it's more convenient, first of all, that you can just pick up from somebody's bin. You don't have to wait for them to be home. Um or you're doing private messaging, because once you're chosen for someone's gift, you move to private messaging, and so there's conversations going on. And so you kind of get to know the person a little bit, and you also know that, like with craft items that are given, or scraps of this, and yarn or sewing machine or whatever, then you're if you're interested, you usually have that same interest in general. So then you have more things to talk about. And then you think of that person when you see something being posted. Um, and so there's really good connections being made, and new friendships being formed. Um, um, a lot of background is being shared. It's become more personal. Like, we know there's been people that have lost their parents and have had to go through items in their house when they're ready to clean it out. And usually they'll include that part in it. I'll tell you, probably 3/4 of the comments on their posts is just, showing support and saying, I've been there and I know it's so hard. Take your time. And, so those are in the middle of people that are willing to take those items. And it really does give the person joy to know that their parents or whoever, their loved ones' items are going to be used by someone that really wants it, that has gone out of their way to say, yeah, I really want that. I'll use that. So I mean, it's deeper connections than just giving and getting. So much deeper. Um, so yeah, it does help with that loneliness. And I think we're kind of a connection to the outside world for people that can't get out, don't have transportation, don't drive anymore, don't have anybody locally anymore, things like that. It really is a lifeline for some.
That brings to mind, or brings me to, I guess between both groups, what types of progress have you seen in your involvement? Like, is there a marked milestones within yourself or within these organizations that keep you going
I
How do you
would
define
say the
progress?
milestone for myself would be the whole learning of when I volunteering for Street Soldiers, because I've done that for 6 years, has changed me immensely. You really have to lose your judgment at the door. So rethinking, like you had brought up about someone in a Rolls Royce going to a food pantry. That's like a judgment that pops into your head, but really that's learned.
Yes.
That's picked up as you're young, overhearing people making comments or whatever, and you just kind of jump on board with that. Oh yeah, they're lying. They're lying. They don't really need that. But not knowing that that person showed up in a Rolls Royce, but it's not even their car. They either borrowed the car or someone gave them a ride, or maybe a parent left them that car. Maybe they live in that car.
Mhm.
I mean, there's so many things that you don't think of unless it's put right in your face or you hear those stories. So to me, it was a real check on myself about my judgment and trying to really stop those things popping into my head. And if it does, to just shut it down and really get the big picture and have more empathy. Um, and so I think that from what I've learned, um, has carried over into everything else. And that was a big part of me wanting to. Um, I was finally talked into starting my own Buy Nothing group in my area by the administrator in Albany. So that that is a life lesson that I wish I learned a long time ago, or I wish I unlearned those things when I was young. Um, but I guess you hang out with like-minded people, and if no one pulls you aside and says, "Hey, wait a minute," and gives you a different view, or by going to Street Soldiers and seeing it for myself and hearing people's stories, it was a game changer for me, and it's changed my life, really. I think I am such a more gentle, kinder person because of it. Um, I try not to assume things from people, go more with my gut, and um, and it's helped in every aspect of my life as a person.
You know, links and the idea that we are just links in a chain,
Mhm.
and we're closer than we think, we're more alike than we think. Um, that was also one of the motivators for the podcast itself, was just with this iteration, talking to locals, people who have unique perspectives. It's I've spoken with a few people. We're all from different backgrounds, different
Mhm.
education, different socioeconomic standings. But at the at the end of the day, we are human beings who have one particular driving force that makes it common between us, which is the desire to lift up the community that we are in. And we
Mhm.
all choose, the folks who have come on the podcast thus far do it in different yet similar ways. And
Mhm.
when I moved here, because I didn't have to worry about the concerns around homeownership, that freed up a lot of energy and psychological space for me to invest in other areas. And
Right.
the folks here, upstaters, I haven't been downstate yet, but I've
Mhm.
traveled just a little bit in the state. Everyone's been very kind and very generous, and that's kind of another driving force for me, is to show that New York is, number one, a very large and beautiful state, and
Mhm.
not
It is.
everyone. The whole of the population doesn't live in NYC.
That's right. Exactly.
Right. And
Yeah.
another thing for me too is, because people have engaged with me on so many different fun levels. Another reason for the podcast in this iteration is to show that Albany is pretty cool. The Capital Region is pretty cool. And I think there's a lot of inside jokes or jokey about Albany being boring or Albany being
Right.
this, whatever, insert negative context.
Yeah.
And it's not, when we get down to the person level, these people are thriving and contributing in the community. So therefore Albany or the capital region is not boring or bad. And that's what I wanted to show is it's very important. In the 20 months that I've been here, I've seen some of the cultural societal beliefs around Albany, and it's like,
Mhm.
that's not all the way true. And
No.
so I would like to help change the discussion around my new adopted hometown,
Yeah,
because
that's great.
it means something. And I think
Mhm.
changing culture through language and action, so how we speak about our community, is an exceptional way. And it's very based, but psychologically I have to remember, I don't want to crap on my community. That's pretty simple, so it's not hard for me.
Right.
I've noticed that people, natives, so people who've lived around for quite a long time, they seem to carry certain negative views. And
Yeah.
I don't want to take experience away from people, but I would like to change the conversation. What do you think
Right.
about that?
I've born and raised in Colony and Albany until about 7 years ago. I just moved to Guilderland then. Um, but that's also Albany County. Um, you see things promised and you see things not followed through. So there's a lot of frustration in that. You see lots of work being done to rehab certain areas, and then you watch them fall apart. And um, you see abandoned buildings and the houses with the red X's on. So that's all the negatives. And I mean, in reality, just driving around in Albany, you can see a beautiful area and then an area that you're like, oh yeah, we have that crap. But so that's just reality. But I mean, on the other side of it, there's a lot of great things to do in Albany. And the summer is fun. And there's some great free concerts and there's just there's something for everybody in Albany. There really is. So when you look at it that way, there's always something to do. If you're bored, then you're not trying really.
Ah,
Free stuff and inexpensive stuff, all over the state. Beautiful, beautiful parks and everything. Um, but yeah, I think the negative things are just from people being let down so many times. No follow through, and when's it going to get better, and where's that affordable housing that's supposed to be built, and why are the rents going up? I mean, that's all across the country, but we feel like you're not helping us like you said you were gonna. So I'm sure that happens everywhere, but I've never lived anywhere else, so I understand those comments. But I agree with you. I think that that positive reinforcement. So if you're talking positively, you can always find something positive about everything. So it's just like talking to children. You leave that negative out and just say the positive, and it does change your mindset.
I love what you've said because I've heard it in bits of conversations thus far. And because of the frequency of the Albany has potential, but we're constantly being
Hmm.
let down by our legislators, that probably, just anecdotally from me talking to people, in less than 2 years, that seems to be very high on the list.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
and as you say that, I'm like, okay, how can I put this snippet of someone in the community saying that in front of someone? I'll figure that out.
Well,
I'll
the
have
perfect example that just came
to.
to me is, in COVID, they built that Skyway, the Skyway to nowhere. I mean, there was a lot of money put into that. I've walked through it, and I was like, well, where's the vendors? Where's the entertainment? Where's the um, what is it? What is it for? We just came out of COVID. People lost their businesses. Why are we doing that? It's not going to bring people from other areas. It's not that thing that will do it. So that was a big negative to Albany residents especially, that, maybe there could have been something more beneficial to the residents. Or, if they wanted to bring people into the Albany area. I mean, I would like to see that become a little something more. It's a nice spot to hang out in the summer. But
I think you're not wrong, because everyone is definitely entitled to their experience and opinions, and I'm not going to fight you on it. I never would anyway. I kind of agree. There's an ellipse behind that particular project. Being so close to the Skyway, I use it for exercise. Like, I'll walk to the
Mhm.
riverfront from there. But you, even as a newbie, here we go again. There's potential, right?
Mhm.
So let's maybe connect the riverfront, about the Albany Riverfront Collaborative and things like that. We don't have to fully take down 787 necessarily to enjoy what the Skyway project has. Let's bring in some festivals. Let's, like you say, bring in
Right.
some vendors and things like that. I have a couple of ideas for that, as a matter of fact, just as a citizen.
Mhm.
But everything is energy, right? How much energy do I
Right.
have to give?
That's it. Like we talked about before, we all have all these ideas. I'll
Yeah,
throw ideas out there, all that. Just raise your hand if you're gonna follow through for me, because
yeah.
I'm just busy with my brain coming up with ideas.
I know
I
it.
can't
I
go any
know.
further than that.
I know. But see, if I wanted to spin that, I'll tie two conclusions together. So yeah, there's when I realized, being here for not very long, doing my pre-research to get me here. I will say, as a transplant, or to the natives here, you can be anything you want to be in Albany. As you said, there's
Mhm.
a niche for everything, and I figured that out really fast. There is a wide variety of interests here. I mean, super niche things, but also very
Right.
common things as well. There are social groups, sporting groups, all sorts of support for activities here, outdoor, indoor, whatever.
Right.
You can recreate yourself at the drop of a hat in the capital region.
Mhm.
And I love that. And so, maybe I'll reframe the word potential in my mind for capacity for growth, right? So
Yeah.
if I want to think of how I can contribute to my community as a citizen, then I'll look at the capacity for growth here and see what my interests are that might be of interest for other people, and help grow my community around it, which is essentially what you've
Right.
done. It's what you're doing. And I'm gonna go ahead and close the conversation, because I feel like we've been I feel enormously uplifted and productive, like really good especially on a Sunday,
Right.
Sunday morning.
Right.
It feels really great to have had this, because the perspective I choose to take as a citizen, especially using any social platforms. I mean, I'm not horrifically popular or anything like that. I'm just toiling away at this experiment. But what really drives me is the value add to my community. I do love living here.
Mhm.
And so I try to make each of my actions that involve others positive, and a value add to the community. So
Right.
thank you for sharing time with me this morning.
Oh,
It's been really
absolutely.
lovely.
It has been. I appreciate it. I appreciate the invitation.
Of course, I feel like, as I was getting ready this morning, I was like, I need to have Nancy back for the free account exclusively. Like, I feel like we collaborate 10-15 minutes here or there, as time goes
Yeah.
on, for the purpose of Free in Albany, to be
Yes.
able to express some of the free aspects and what you are doing, what I am doing to promote that. So You'll be hearing from me again, I think.
Excellent, excellent. I have a lot to talk about.
I know,
But
same. I know.
and I really did want to get the resources out there, these to to support everyone in Albany. There really are a lot out there. They're just not easy to find.
Agree. And so when we talk about how much energy I have to do X, Y, and Z and to be impactful,
Hmm.
it's something that it takes time to assess. It takes time to
Right.
execute, and bringing a quality product is going to be top of mind for this free stuff. So once again, I appreciate you sharing time, and I'm going to double back with Cody and tell him what a great get you were for this
Oh,
experiment,
thank
this
you.
project.
Thank you.
But thank you so much, and I really
Oh,
hope you enjoy your next week and the holiday season. Let's
yeah,
not forget, this is the season of giving.
it sure
So
is.
also a very timely conversation for that as well.
Yes, you're exactly right.
Thank you, Nancy,
All
and
right. Thank
I hope
you.
to see you soon.
Okay, you got it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.